Hello and welcome back to Wine and Wine with Sam Loy and Russell Cutting. We're on to blue already, so let's unfortunately for white, there was a pretty shallow color and we didn't have any honorary mentions. But blue, as per usual, is pretty deep this time, and in fact, there were cards that didn't even make honorary mentions that are probably playable. So now let's get started with these. Russell, you're a big fan of Hullbreaker Horror.
Yeah, I am. This is probably not as it may come up in standard because it is that classic like control finisher costing a lot, but like flash can't be countered and then does lots of stuff. Unsubstantiate whenever you cast a spell, which is pretty delightful. I would dodge this probably in Pioneer and Modern, but 7-point Highlander, I has been known to reanimate a few creatures on the cheap, and we do have Tidespout Tyrant, which is very similar, which can bounce lands, but can't return spells, but is a 5/5, so it dies to Unholy Heat. So I'm looking forward very much to testing this card in the singleton pointed format.
I mean, it's also meaningful there that you can just have one of each. Like, you don't need to...
Yeah,
it's not
exactly.
an either or there, yeah.
Yeah, so for sure, I think it's certainly something I'm going to be playing, tinkering with. But again, not to dissuade, like, that it does have the classic hallmarks of a standard control finisher, just, and particularly Mirror Breaker if control does become popular because of that flash can't be countered clause, and then, like, your ops become, like, unsubstantiated or bouncing problem permanents, like kills tokens if that's a problem.
Bounces
very
itself as well to avoid wraths and if you,
okay. So, yeah.
It's a really powerful card. I am less high on it than you are, but what I really like about it, especially, it does have all those control applications. I don't think you're actually wrong about any of that sort of stuff. I just see its percentages a little bit lower, but it is a Kraken, and that's going to be relevant when we get to multicolored, so we'll have to keep this in mind. But I think it's a really cool card. It's a really fair design, powerful and fair, and I like it a lot. Next up, we have Thirst for Discovery. Thirst for Discovery is well, look, we're getting through the thirst cycle. It's compulsive research at instant. And
not
that's
quite.
it.
I think compulsive research can discard any land, but this does have basic land.
Oh, this is basic. I forgot that.
Which is important because basic lands have a much lower kind of value in constructed, but I still think with how bad the mana is, we're going to see a high proportion of basic lands in decks. Yeah. But again, this is extremely good card advantage at instant speed, and I love it.
Draw 3, discard 2 is pretty close to drawing 2 in a lot of decks.
Good. Yeah.
All that,
Sift,
Yeah, like it. The whole the power level of your cards need to be as such that finding them is more important than having more of them most of the time in most formats. So I like this, and I can see it getting played in some decks. Snow decks particularly will really like this in standard, but there's also the chance that the best thing to do is just play all non-basics or almost all non-basics rather than go for the snow package. So there's a little cool tension there that I really like, that it says basic land on it. But yeah, cool card. Very, very
the final point to note in this compared to all the other thirsts is that we are in a flashback format, whereas before not as much. I mean, I guess the Thirst for Discovery, I believe it was from Theros, we had the escape mechanic, but
that was the enchantment one, was it not?
Yes, that was the enchantment one, which is a little bit less relevant, or I'm not sure, but either way, that didn't see any play. But I think the combination of a basic land, which is a much easier, I think, type than enchantment, and the fact that we are in a flashback format certainly points to me maybe this seeing main board applications as a 1 to 2 of in some decks.
But it's a good mana cost to keep up as well, because that's when a lot of counter spells come in. So interesting card. Cool to see it played. If it gets played, it's probably going to be really good and limited at the very least, and maybe get some 7-point Highlander application. Who knows? really liked Winged Portent. And this was something I put on, and it's very, very archetype dependent, and that's a thing. But this card's really powerful. We've seen a lot of tempo flyer decks over the last few years, and they've sort of been powerful enough to go into older formats, whether that be the mono blue flyers, which played cards like Dive Down to get around removal, along with I think Tempest Djinn was the blue X4.
Yeah, Tempest Djinn, yeah.
X being the number of islands you control. That sort of archetype really wants this card. It is an instant, which is really meaningful. And it's also on 3, similar to Thirst for Discovery, where it's the sort of thing you could keep up at the same time as you could keep up a counterspell. Now, it is not going to go in every deck, and it may not even have... I haven't really been through Standard to see if it's got enough cards to support it. Generally, those decks seem to exist when a Curiosity effect is around at the same time, and I don't even know if we got one of them. The only ones I know of are on creatures at the moment. So, I think that this deck is probably good enough to get played in Historic. It's certainly only going to get played in one archetype there, but it's certainly a card that as we get more cards into the format and we get new sets and the format becomes bigger and bigger and bigger, this card might start to turn on.
Yeah, I certainly see this as a get for Historic, Mono Blue, Tempo Aggro, which is something I will play because I love those archetypes immensely. There is another blue card that costs 3 and also draws cards we'll talk about a little bit later, but I do want to mention that there is quite a big push for Spirit archetype in this format, and a lot of them have a lot of flying, and
Flash flying too.
Is flash flying. There is also a bit of architecture. I haven't quite smoothed it out just yet for an aggressive blue base deck where you just want to be dumping your hand of 1 or 2 drops and then potentially regassing. I think the card we'll talk about later is a little bit more suited to it, but maybe you want a 5th copy, which this certainly could be. But Historic applications, potential standard playability, and my brother has a bird commander deck, so he's very happy.
All right, well, fair enough.
It does stuff like that as well.
Okay, that's more than enough on the honorary mentions. Let's get to the actual list.
Okay.
The first one we have here is Necro-Duality, which is a Sam pick. This is not a Russell pick.
Oh, yeah.
Tell
me. Sell me on this card, please.
This is really powerful. It's really powerful. Getting another non-token zombie, when you cast one, is just a really powerful effect. It makes you pseudo-immune to counter spells. And it's just a really open-ended effect for 4 mana. I like this card a lot. I think that... Look, I'm not really sure what the combos are going to be for it. I just know there's going to be combos for it. And I'm here for that. I think that this is the sort of card that you need for let's say, a more lower curve zombie deck to push through some of the other mid-range archetypes we've already seen. We've seen a lot of zombie support, and meaningfully, we've missed some of them in this section, including a card that I'm going to lovingly call Squadron Zombie, which gets another copy of itself on death, the 2-mana 2/1. And there's already existing support for the archetype. So this is a card that I really like. I think it's going to be certainly playable in a fair way. If that's sort of the floor for it, maybe it's a sideboard card there, but it is playable there, and then. At the top end, there's maybe an abusive thing to do with this while it's legal and standard. Now, we got a while for that to happen. I don't know if the tools exist for it to be, completely degenerate busted in standard at the moment. But we do have things like, I forget the zombie, the 1-mana one that makes a treasure or a -1/-1 counter when it dies.
Shambling Ghast?
Shambling Ghast? Yeah, cool. So that will get you to this on a turn early. If you get this on turn 3 and then you start casting zombies, you can probably get 2 down on turn 4. Then, we're starting to be unbeatable on board. So it's a weird card, and I just like it a lot.
Yeah, look, it's an extremely narrow doubling season effect that costs 1 less, but I can't argue with something that... it's not a cast, it's an enters the battlefield thing, which has its benefits, has its negatives, so they can still counter the spell, but things returning from the graveyard do some stuff, so Yeah, I know the casual community is absolutely going gangbusters over this, and anything that is reasonably costed, and in this case splashable, that can double up on effects, it replaces itself pretty quickly. So yeah, I think it could end up in some tier 2 decks, and maybe it does bust things open. So yeah,
Cool. All right. Next one, we have
yes.
one of our first legends, Jacob Hawken, Inspector, Inspector. No further words. So, this is a card I think you and I both like quite a lot. Has a lot of throwbacks to when we had Creature Jace in Magic Origins. I like having a good looter effect with the top end payout. So, it's not quite as powerful as Jace was, I don't think, but at the same time, if you get to pay 6 and flip this, you're going to really start doing some busted stuff. So I like this as a card that could get played in maybe control decks, maybe mid-range decks that play blue, but also just something that, again, is a little open-ended and will probably find its own home.
Yeah, this is a extremely push looter. And can do some real shenanigans because of the cheating of mana on the Hawkins Insight cost. So, and on turn 6 or whatever turn you flip it, you can immediately get one of those cards as well, which is like very quick to pay off if you have anything. Certainly has some applications in Cube.
It would be great.
It's certainly fun Cube card, and I think it's just a super sick card. But like, this is one of the best looters I've ever seen.
Yep,
close to Jace, Vryn's Prodigy, and that in its heyday was absolutely dominant and a multi-format all-star. Is this quite to that level? No, but the pedigree exists, and it's a interesting and unique enough effect on the backside, staple to what is commonly a good effect, similar to Search of Azcanta type stuff here as well.
It's a good flaw. So Magic has a long history of 2 mana activated ability centered creatures being really good. So, things that, maybe they need to be in play a turn, or maybe you can take advantage of them straight away, depending on the card. But if the flaw is that you pay 2 mana for a creature and you exchange it for 1 mana removal spell, you're behind 1 mana, but it's still not that bad. And a lot of mana removal spells will be paying 2, so you'll be trading equally on cards and mana, and some of them will be 3. And then a bunch of games as well, they're just not going to have it or have the time to remove it when they're trying to do their other stuff. So, great flaw, amazing ceiling. There's probably a decent middle ground in between them where it's not doing too much. But at the same time, look, I'm always happy with high floor cards. Then, Yeah.
And much like Search of Azcanta and Jace, you can do the tricky dip where you have one side flipped and then you can play another copy.
You can, if you can pay all the mana. This is
there are bits.
Yeah, this is the sort of thing that blue mid-range decks really like. And if we have some blue mid-range decks, it's probably good for the format because I don't think you can play this in turns. I think it's a waste of time in turns, more or less. It might go in more decks that really want the Dragon Egg, Smoldering Dragon.
Yeah.
Yep. Smoldering Egg?
Smoldering
Dragon. Something like that.
Ashmouth Dragon.
There we go. That card's quite good. That worked out quite well. And this sort of plays into more of that mid-rangey sort of archetype. So if we do see these decks even in the same colors start to split up a little bit more, this card could be one of the drivers of that. And that'd be interesting to see. I'd really like to see it. All right. Next up, we have the card you were alluding to earlier, Inspired Idea. Why don't you take us away, Russell?
It took me a couple of goes on this one to... I kind of wrote it off, but then it's just like, hold on, 3 mana, draw 3 is filthy good on Ray.
Really good.
Really good. And while you can't do that too many times, you can certainly do it the first time, and then any top deck after that, you are likely going to have the 5 mana to just, where it is about where your draw threes sit these days. Maybe one more than, concentrate is the typical one where this comes from. But
yeah, people say that, but we don't get concentrate.
No. That card is too good.
Yeah, we don't get concentrate. Like people, there's like, oh, it's it's only one less than concentrate. It's like they don't print concentrate.
Yeah.
Like
what we get, we do get 5 mana draw threes, typically with a scry attached. But the fact
like Graven Lord's the most recent one. Yeah,
for sure. But the rider of you get it for 3 mana if you need it, very good. So this wants really your 1-drop, 2-drop, or a 1-drop, 2 1-drops, and then refill your hand type of thing, like dump your hand and refill it, regas it, and then you should have 5 mana again later on in the game. So if there's aggressive decks, sorcery is a bit of a bump against it, but this is just so much raw card advantage for so little mana. This card's good. This card's very, very good. And stuff with Smoldering Egg again. Remember, Smoldering Egg doesn't look at the converted mana cost of the card. It looks at how much you paid for it.
Yeah, so, which is a slight downside for Thalia. Let's be honest. I think one of the one of the things which is really cool about this card is that at 3 mana, it's got a slight downside that can be an upside, but you can probably only get away with it once anyway. So if you do this twice, you have 1 card in hand. Is your hand limit. Card. That is it. You can have 1. Do it 3 times, forget about it. Get rid of all your cards at the end of the turn. But if you are playing a format where having cards and you're playing more of a control-y style Reanimator deck, that can be a big upside. So I think most notably recently in Modern, Esper Reanimator, I think Aspiring Spike was the person who created the current version of the Esper Reanimator deck. If not, my apologies to whoever's name I'm forgetting or don't know. That deck could like something like this, where it's card advantage. That deck was playing Muldrifter, like seriously was playing Muldrifter, just because you could reanimate it as a draw 2, maybe drawing 3 and then maybe allowing you to discard your Archons and all the rest of it is actually an upside there. So I don't know how much relevancy that has for Standard, unless we're doing really sick stuff with Olivia, which we'll talk about later. I don't really see it, but just maybe for middle-sized formats like Historic, that might be the sort of power level where that turns into a conditional upside.
Definitely Historic, much like the Premonition card we saw drawing cards instead of flying. I think this can be definitely used there, because if you draw it on turn 4, you cast it, hopefully play the land that you draw off it, and a 1-drop, so you are probably still, after dumping your hand, you're probably still fine. I do think this will have significant Standard impact for what it's worth. I see this is one of the stronger blue cards, just because on raw rate, it's not to be messed with.
I'm a little lower on it for Standard, I think, but if I would be really happy if we ended up there. But yeah, I absolutely, yeah, it seems really cool, especially if we get a tempo blue deck that wants this effect. I think the format would really like that. So
I would love that.
Yeah,
I would love that a lot.
Anyway, cool card. Cleave templating, really just while we're talking about a Cleave card, sucks. I don't like the templating, the text templating. It's horrendous. It's no good.
Hurts my head.
They could have done something cool with that.
Kicker.
You don't even need it to have kicker, but
it is just kicker. It
is just kicker. I mean, there's a lot of abilities in Magic which are just kicker. That being said, why didn't they just do some cool artwork thing instead of the braces around the terms? Because it's like, and it says, and the other worst thing is that the reminder text says, remove the words in square brackets. They're called braces, man. Come on, America, catch up. English, do it.
Yeah.
Anyway,
get cleaved.
Get cleaved.
I thought we were
terrible name too.
Cleave.
Terrible name. As if the word cleave is not like a red-black effect.
It's like an overload effect or something.
It should be an aggressive thing, for sure, right? It's a kicker effect?
Get it.
A kicker effect? It's you would never think that someone who is playing Bloodthirst and Cleave in the same deck would be doing the wrong thing. But, here we are. So, anyway. Moving on,
yeah. Yes.
Overcharged Amalgam. So
Take it away.
this card is really good. Like, okay, so I am a big fan of cards with multiple modes. Just as a rule, I value them a lot higher than a lot of people. Sometimes I'm wrong. Notably, one of the times I was wrong was the last time we had this sort of effect, which was Slimgar's Sorcerer, I think, which was a blue 1/2/1 flash flyer that also had an Essence Scatter with Exploit. And I was wrong about that card. This is a chance for me to be wrong again. I think that a flash 4-mana 3/3 flyer is a playable card in blue mid-range decks, and having a stifle / counterspell effect that it can sacrifice itself for is enough. I think that together, that is a playable card. So you can play it a 4-mana, which is below rate for a counterspell stifle sort of thing, but if your opponent's ultimating a Planeswalker, it's a very cool effect to have in your deck anywhere. And then also a flash 4-mana 3/3 flyer is also below rate, but like a really good effect to have access to on the same card. Now, in addition to that, you can sacrifice other things, and that's where this card really finds extra value. And if we're talking about blue-green flash decks, or blue-black zombie decks with decay zombies, where we're doing all these sort of things, maybe if we're trading in a decay zombie, we can stifle a smaller effect and feel good about it than we would if we were having to trade this whole card in. So I think it's got a lot of upside, and the floor is good enough that I see this as one of the best cards in the set.
Best cards in the set is a big call for me. I like it a lot.
Yeah, for me, it's in like that top strata of power level.
Okay.
Yeah.
Void Slime on a 3/3 flyer. Pretty good. 3/3 flyer is going to pressure Life Turtles and Planeswalkers pretty well. I think it's a fine rate. I think if you are building your deck correctly, you will have Sacrifice Fodder, and in an absolute pinch, it's a bad counterspell. So, yeah.
I could certainly see blue decks that don't play like a ton of Decay Zombies or anything like that, but maybe you're sacrificing your Jacob to this, and it's like, yeah, I've got a couple of loots out of it. I can sack my Jacob to this, and that's a great deal. So, yeah.
No, I definitely see it as one of the stronger cards in blue and one of the stronger cards in this set. I don't quite see it as like upper echelon. I see it as a potential to probable playable within the format, and I want it to be good because I think the games and the format where this is a playable and good card is a format I like to play in because it is rewarding choices. It is making interesting game states, and also asks for good creative deck building. So I would like this card to be very good. I'm not quite sold on it, but I think, I know I would like this card to be very good. But we will see.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we have one more card that I think I missed. Did we miss this?
Yes.
Okay.
Did.
So, sorry guys, I must have hit forward slide twice in a row. Wash Away is... Thank you. I really appreciate that. Wash Away is a very powerful effect, and it is basically a counter spell, with the 1-mana version being counter target spell that wasn't cast from its owner's hand. I just want to remind people about some of those cards. Galvanic Iteration from Flashback, Alrund's Epiphany from Foretell.
So that's good.
Yeah.
Ooh, that's good.
So both Flashback and Foretell cards is counters for 1 mana. And this card, this might be the best blue card. I don't know. It might be the most contextually relevant blue card. In fact, I'm pretty sure it is. But at the very least, the blue-red decks, while they're being inbred, will be playing these against each other. And that's the flaw. And the fact that its least effective mode is Counterspell. Cancel. Sorry, my bad. Cancel is good. So, and this is the card that might see play in other formats as well. I don't know how far back you'd really ever go. You need to, I think in a lot of formats, if you're going backwards, this would really need to be a cancel to you. And then why are you playing it? I don't really get it. Yeah. But, hey, a 1-mana counterspell however limited it is never to be totally forgotten. So, big fan of this card.
Yeah, this one, now you kind of put forward those two scenarios, which are absolutely incredibly important, and both of them are hard targeting the deck that everybody's complaining about, and also is playable in the deck that everyone's complaining about in terms of mirror. So inbreeding a deck tends to make it weaker against the field. The rest of the field, particularly now that we have the rest of these dual slow lands, in order to splash a hyper-effective card against the main plan of one of the most consistent best decks. This is what will hopefully help enable churn, because if that deck starts to rise to the top, this is an extremely good answer to that deck. Quite splashable, and like it is at its most effective when you are paying 1 mana for it, which is exactly what you want. You want it as its spell pierce plus, like it's better than a spell pierce, but like it's obviously hyper targeted for that. So good card.
Yeah, also trades for a Goldspan Dragon when you need it to. So I like the card a lot. And yeah, I've heard people talk about this, and a little bit talk about this card a little less than it deserves, I think, because I think people are forgetting that it does hit the foretell cards, which is it's easy to forget.
Such a weird mechanic. Like it's
a strange mechanic. It's strange
because people are it's part of my hand. It's not part of the hand. It's mix up. The cancel part. I know cancel is a pretty average card, but we were talking about before with these the first card and the prophecy card. They're both 3 mana instant draw effects, and you can hold up this or a draw effect very happily, and you've got the fail case of cancel with your draw 3-ish cards. So very good pick on this one. I like Wash Away mostly for standard, but
cool.
Maybe some applications.
Yeah, mostly for standard. I really just as an aside, I think for the visual design, they really nailed all the Nephalia Stromkirk stuff in these two sets. Which they hadn't quite nailed down quite as well. I had a lot of cards that I liked in the past, but I think that they really nailed the bloated sea zombie thing.
And, my favorite one is the zombie with the diver mask on it.
Oh yeah, I really wanted to put that on.
Like, it doesn't need to be stitched well together because the diving suit holds it in.
It holds it all together. It's just like it's so gross. It's so dim, but I love it. Yeah. Cool. So, all right. Well, that's it. That's all we have for blue. So thanks very much for sticking with us, guys. That was one of our longer ones that we'll have. And I hope you're as excited about the blue cards as I am. And we'll be back with the black.
Take it away.